Now, 7 months ago on this channel, I made a video about Erik Ten Hag. In said video, I was questioning Ten Hag and came to a conclusion, and I know this sounds stupid now, but I actually thought Ten Hag was a good manager, simply going through growing pains with this Man United team, and I said that I thought he was the right man to finally provide Man United some stability, and he was able to change the club around. Now, this still might come true. Ten Hag, yes, has made some mistakes, but he has proven that he is a good manager for United, and I mean, last season he finished 3rd with United, and there were a ton, and I mean a ton of good signs from last season. He seems to not care how big a player was and simply fielded the best team that he thought was best for United. He also managed to get United to an FA Cup final where they lost 2-1 to Man City. Again, there were some really positive signs last season, and a ton of United fans liked Erik Ten Hag and wanted him to lead their club into a new era. But here we are. Not a year later, United sits 8th in the table, and despite Ten Hag dragging an injury-struck team to yet another FA Cup final for the 2nd consecutive year in a row, so many United fans are questioning Ten Hag, and their general media seems to think that Ten Hag is on his last legs as the manager of Manchester United. But is this criticism valid? Has Ten Hag proven he is not the right man for the job, or is the criticism unfair to Ten Hag and the work he has done at United? Well, that's what we'll be talking about today. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Back of the Net here. I hope you're all doing well. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. Now, going into the season, Ten Hag was regarded as a good manager. He took a team that finished 6th the year prior into comfortably qualifying for Champions League football, finishing 3rd behind only Man City and Arsenal. They only conceded 43 goals all season long in the Premier League last season, which was the exact same amount as 2nd place Arsenal, and only managed 3 wins less than Arsenal. Man United were a good team. They had an identity to how they played, and you could see that Man United and Ten Hag were building a good project. Now, a project, of course, isn't always going to be smooth sailing. Just ask Arsenal and Arteta, but there were tons of promising signs from the ex-manager and Man United. And in the summer, they did some objectively decent business. Now, it wasn't amazing business, but it was pretty good. I mean, they brought in one of Chelsea's better players at the time in Mason Mount. Yes, even at the time, I thought it was a huge overpay, but it was still a pretty good move. Mason Mount was a Champions League winning midfielder that was fairly versatile in midfield and could add a good dynamic to this Man United team. They got Johnny Evans on a free, and he was a low-risk veteran signing that could add some depth, but mainly add as a good voice in the change room for the younger players. Andre Onana was regarded by many as an elite signing, coming off a Champions League final appearance with Inter Milan, and United had just let go of David De Gea, so they desperately needed a first-choice keeper. And Onana was thought by many to be much better with his feet in the build-up play, and around the same ability to make some good saves, and maybe even less error-prone than David De Gea. They brought in Amrabat, they brought in Reguilon on a loan deal from Spurs, and they spent big, and I mean big money on their marquee signing Rasmus Højlund from Atalanta on a €74 million fee. Rasmus was a fairly inexperienced, unproven 6'3" Danish striker that had played just 87 games in his entire professional career, scoring just 27 goals at that time. So even at the time, most people saw the signing, including me, and thought it was a massive, and I mean massive, overpay, fully banking on upside on Rasmus Højlund. United spent big money in the summer. There's no doubt about that. And according to Transfermarkt, United had a net spend in the summer of negative €143.96 million, proving that United were willing to back Erik Ten Hag. So with Man United pouring in so much resources into a team and manager that everyone believed in, they rightfully expected to have an even more successful season than last. But right now, they haven't been anywhere near as good as last season. They sit 8th in the table with just 1 win in their last 9 games. I mean, they did technically have 2 wins, but one of those wins was a win on penalties against Coventry, so I'm going to be counting that as a draw. And in their last 2 games, they are coming off a 4-0 loss to Crystal Palace, and most recently a toothless 1-0 loss to Arsenal. Their last win was a 4-2 win over Sheffield United on the 24th of April, and before that, their last Premier League win was on March 9th with a 2-0 win over Everton. Man United this season have been nothing short of underwhelming. Yes, they are still in the FA Cup, set to have a final against Man City for the 2nd consecutive year in a row, but Man United have just been pathetic for large portions of the season. I mean, they almost lost to Coventry City in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Coventry City. Many of the United players look scared, look checked out, and a lot of these losses either come from tactically being beaten all ends up, or just a team having a weak mentality and crumbling under any sort of pressure that is put on them. Now, yes, United have had tons, and I mean tons of injuries this season, and their squad isn't nearly as deep as you would like, but some of those performances, even with the injuries that they had, has just been inexcusable. So is Ten Hag to blame for the season? Well, one thing that needs to be said is that both Erik Ten Hag and Man United have not been great in the transfer market. I think Rasmus Højlund is a really, and I mean really good signing. Mount could have actually been pretty decent, but he's just too injury prone this season. But the signing of Antony for 95 million euros, signing Casemiro, who was 30 years old at the time, for 70.65 million euros, letting De Gea leave for a keeper who isn't miles better than him is some poor decision making. I honestly can't really tell what United are trying to do in the windows. During Arteta's first couple years at Arsenal, almost all of his major signings were in their early 20s and provided something in the place of need for Arsenal. United to me still seems stuck on overpaying for big name players that have had maybe 1 or 2 good seasons, or just some big name players like a Casemiro that has just a big name, played for a big team, but despite their age, didn't make Man United second guess the move. So Ten Hag has to take some blame in terms of team building. He has been long enough at the club that he should be able to tell exactly what he is trying to build in the market. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned his treatment of players that were there before him, like Cristiano Ronaldo, or even mainly like Jadon Sancho, who once again blossomed in Germany. So off the pitch, I wouldn't say Ten Hag has been great. As far as on the pitch goes, Ten Hag hasn't really done much this season either. Ten Hag clearly doesn't know his best 11. Yes, injuries have played a huge role in that, but it seems like every game he changes his team style of play to suit the opposition rather than being brave and playing the one way of football that they know how and try to build an identity. His players seem to lack steel and bravery, which I don't know how much of that can actually be blamed on Ten Hag, but I digress. Ten Hag has seemed to struggle to build a winning culture at this club. He blames players if they have poor results, and he has been absolutely dreadful in the transfer market. So is Ten Hag the right man for the job? Honestly, I would still give him one more season. I don't know if he still is the right man for the job, but I do think he deserves at least one more season at United. And this season can kind of be his prove it year. He's proven it before that he knows how to win with this United team. Back him again in the window, and if United have a year where they haven't got as much injuries, but they still somehow perform badly, well then I would understand sacking Ten Hag. But Ten Hag has had to deal with a lot, and I mean a lot of injuries in this United team, a lot of outside noise with this United team, and has had a ton, and I mean a ton of turnover. There hasn't been any sort of stability in this team. They have to bring in so many new players every transfer window, sell so many players every transfer window. That is so hard to create a winning team with that dynamic. Yet despite all of this, he has still managed to bring United to 2 consecutive FA Cup finals and has had some really good moments with this team. So in my opinion, he at least deserves one more year.